Hey, fellow tennis nerds. I hope all is well. Today I have a guest called Mark Sansait. You might have seen him on the Real Tennis channel or Essential Tennis. He's a friend of Ian's. He plays competitively there. He has some very funny outbursts that I think people like. A lot about related to fast food and not being as fast on the court as he wants to. He's a software engineer. He loves tennis, a proper tennis nerd. So he reviews strings and gear on his YouTube channel. We'll put the link in the description. And so today we will talk about gear, we'll talk about tennis, which we both love, and some other stuff. So I hope you enjoy it. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jonas. I don't know if your audience has noticed your hairline. It shocked me when we first got on call. So looking, I would say about 7 to 10 years younger, in my opinion. I don't know what other age range people give you, but looking much younger and much more fresh.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. You should always start the podcast with a compliment. I think that always helps.
Always. Especially with the Joe Rogan podcast. That's like the only podcast I listen to, other than some random tennis ones. But yeah, always start with a compliment, but don't be creepy. So I could have been creepy, but I won't. I won't be.
Ah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
So we talked about before we jumped on this, like how much we both enjoy being on the tennis court because we're
Yep.
not forced to, by
Correct.
profession or by anything. And you have this, I mean, you're competing on like, is it 4.5, 5.0 level NTRP?
Yeah, I get a year and a half ago I got bumped up from 4.5 to 5.0. So 5.0 I would say is like lower level division 1 for men's or high level division like 2 or division 3. So it's pretty elite, but it's like I would say 2 steps away from semi-pro. So got some work to do, but yeah, it's very it's not easy to get to. It takes a lot of training and also a lot of dedication, a lot of resources, especially time to be on the court, working on stuff, and then traveling for tennis tournaments against players that are slightly tougher than you to see what the other competition is like.
Where are you based in the States?
Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So Milwaukee, if you guys aren't familiar with the U.S. Major cities, it's about 90 minutes to 2 hours north of Chicago.
All right. Yeah, so it's pretty cold there, so it's not like super tennis friendly always, or
It's not as tennis friendly as something like maybe Texas or Florida as a state. I'm sure that's more familiar than Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But the outdoor tennis season, and thankfully we have a really, really good tennis public tennis system for like public tennis courts that can be used when the high school users aren't or high school players aren't using it. I believe I would say maybe mid to early April through mid to late October. So April, so that's what, like around 7.5 months. You could play outside, obviously if it's not raining or thunderstorming. So it gets tough around November through March is where we start to struggle for indoor tennis courts. And not a lot of people could afford it, but thankfully, being a software engineer, money's good right now. So I just spend a lot of time at the local tennis club and the local gym.
so how much do you play? Like you try to play like every day or 4 or 5 times a week?
So before I got my puppy, in July, I was playing both indoors and outdoor season. I was playing about 10 times a week. So I did have some double headers in terms of like training or match play. And obviously I had to take some time off because the puppy, it needed to be trained really well. And now I am playing about 4 to 5 times a week, which is still pretty frequent. But then again, that's my passion. So if you want to break down hours during the summer, I'm on the court training or hitting about 15 hours a week across those 10 tennis sessions. So it's pretty intense. And right now during outdoor tennis season, but I have a constraint of having a four-legged fur baby. I'm on the court about 7 to 10 hours competitively. So still pretty good, but not as much as I was used to, which is fine.
How does your body hold up with all that tennis? And congrats, by the way, on the
Oh,
on
thank
the
you,
pro.
thank you. For me, because I'm a smaller. I mean, I'm pretty stocky, but I'm not like 6'6". I've started to realize that people that are very tall, around 6'3" or whatever metric conversion you guys have, so the taller individuals, they start not to only have knee problems but lower back problems. Thankfully, I've stayed away from that. Other than rolling an ankle, I've been pretty injury free, but I can definitely feel that it's my knees, the cartilage in my knees. I'm starting to feel it every now and then. But other than that, really no major injuries. I get sore faster than I should, but I think that's normal given I'm 33 years old now. But again, no major injuries, nothing lingering. I just got to stretch more often because of my knees. But other than that, I've been pretty thankful, pretty lucky, and pretty thankful that nothing tragic has happened. At least not yet.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. Also, I mean, it's tougher to be tall. I've realized that as well. And for
Yeah.
me, it's been like I used to play on concrete courts. I mean, I guess you play on hard courts mainly, but I used to play on concrete when I lived in Malta, and now in Spain, I play on clay, and that
Oh,
helps my.
you are in Spain. Okay.
I'm in Spain, yeah, yeah.
I thought you
Now,
were Malta. Okay, so that's why we were talking about you playing some was it ITF or some futures?
yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
not futures, like it's ITF seniors. 30. You need to be 30 plus, and you
Yep.
can play like categories, right?
Yeah.
But
So I can do
it's
that now.
yeah,
I
you can
gotta
do
get
it
there.
for sure, and they have tournaments in the States. So that it's a great. I mean, some of these events, the problem is like if you go lower category, like there's category from MT, 100, they're called MT, some Masters Tour,
Yeah.
whatever, 100 up to 1,000, right? So 1,000 is the toughest, 100 is the easiest, and like the 100, 200, which are pretty common events, they sometimes there's not enough players. Like they some guys drop all out, or and you don't have enough matches, so you don't that's a bit of a problem. But the 400, 700, up to 1,000, that's really good competition, right?
I did some research because the issue with the states as an adult tennis player, someone that's post college, let's say 23 years old and older, and I want to be competitive. Um, there's not a lot of events held by USTA, the United States Tennis Association. So typically, what I find myself doing is I hit with people my age, and I think on a regular basis, there's only one person in my friend group that could beat me in singles, and that's the reality of it because the better ones just they're 50 pounds overweight or they're not playing as much as I am, and that's okay. But I find myself hitting with a lot of really, really good high schoolers or even current college Division 3 players, and that's the only way I could get like that adrenaline, that rush, that fear of even losing on the tennis court. So I mean, the only adult tennis tournament I've done, and this is an issue with the Midwest U.S., is that I had to travel 5.5 hours to Indianapolis to play an adult USTA tennis tournament. And unfortunately, I know it's weird for me saying this, unfortunately, I won that, which is good. But typically speaking, I don't want to win every single tennis tournament I enter. I want to get to like, the third round or the semifinals and then lose because, I need that reality check of like, hey, it is possible for me as an adult player to lose against other adult tennis players my age. So the ITF futures that Europe is doing really, really well, that's probably my next option. Unfortunately, in the US, there's only like maybe 5 events a year
Yeah.
in the continental US. It's definitely more of a European thing, which is something that Europe as a culture and geographically has embraced really well when it comes to tennis players, specifically adults. It's a lifestyle for you guys.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it could be a change there. It's like kind of a divide from the college junior years to you going up, and then you're in the 30s, and then like it's very tough to find equal up opposition. At least if you're really passionate about your tennis, you want to improve and you want to play high level for your age. Then I mean, the number of players you can play, they are dwindling, right? So it's
Oh
like
yeah,
people
it's a
just like,
drop.
yeah,
It's crazy. So yeah, I mean, again, it is I think personally a culture thing because if you think about the biggest sports in the states, it's American football, Major League Baseball, and you guys don't even play baseball in Europe. Um, like soccer/football is like a, not even in the top 10 here. I think we have
yeah,
hockey, and that's not a European thing unless you're in the Nordic or Scandinavian country. So yeah, I mean, tennis is what the third biggest sport in Europe in terms of
probably, yeah, I would say maybe.
football, and then maybe rugby or cricket, and maybe basketball might be in there. But tennis is definitely top 5, which is I eventually want to move to Europe. That'd be pretty cool, or at least frequent quite often because the times I've been to Europe were just an absolute blast. So yeah, ITF circuit might be a thing for me for 30 plus or 35 plus, depending on the year.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I tend to recommend people to actually try them because the more players you have, the better. And I mean, I understand completely what you mean. Like if you join, you don't want to win, you want to be pushed, right? So
Yep.
if you at least you want to have a really tough matches and you win, you can feel satisfied. But
Yeah.
if you win comfortably, it feels like something is wrong where you just entered a tournament you shouldn't have entered. Or it's like a
Yeah.
bit good feeling, right?
Don't get me wrong. You don't want to be blown out like 6-0, 6-1 in the first round. That's no fun either. But the idea that with certain exceptions of like, hey, maybe you did play really well against a player that is around your level and you beat them like 6-2, 6-3 and never got broken. Okay, that's an exception. But like if you're like just going through the routine and you're, destroying people 6-1, 6-0 in the first 2 rounds, you're right. It's like, why am I even testing myself? And then you win 6-2, 6-3 in the final. Like, okay, that's it. Like, come on, bring it.
Yeah, yeah, and you seem to be a guy who likes to fight, like a bit like Andy Murray. You want to have like these
Oh,
tight matches where you have to
yeah.
grind a bit,
Yeah, I like there is a recent tennis match um that actually isn't published yet, but yeah, I just never gave up. Even if everything was going wrong, I'm gonna do everything. I'm gonna slice, I'm gonna dink, I'm gonna serve and volley. I'm just gonna scream and claw my way out to the best of my ability and see if I can pull out the W, even if things are not looking my way.
Yeah, I think that's the way you have to do it. Like, I mean, the mental game of tennis is one of the most important things, especially I think if you want to improve, small levels, like we talk NTRP or whether it's UTR, but if you want to go from 5.0 to 5.5, a
Yeah.
lot of it is mental, right? Like a lot of
Yep.
it's like, being able to win matches you have no business winning, I think, right?
Yeah, especially, and I don't think a lot of people can relate to this. Obviously, if you have swing vision or if you're recording yourself on camera, okay, you get to see what you look like, even if it's a competitive a competitive tennis match that actually matters. But for people that have played on like a production quality thing, kind of like with essential tennis or real tennis, it certainly adds extra pressure even on the simple things like calling a ball out that's like half a meter out. You're going to be a little bit more scared or more hesitant to call it out because there's 3 cameras on you and up to 50,000 people are viewing that tennis match. And there's going to be people in the comment section. But take it a step further, when it matters, when you're down break point, can you pull that trigger? Can you pull that forehand down the line on an open court and not decelerate and, not have that fear of losing that game? So that type of mentality of like being mentally sharp and mentally tough to pull something to misdirect something on an aggressive or an important point, that type of mentality is like what separates like a good 5-0 in my opinion versus a good 5-5. I would say 75% of the time. It's a lot of it is 100% mental, and a good amount of it is also preparation, like being match tough, match fitness wise and match mentality wise, match tough and ready to go.
Yeah, I feel like the more matches you play, the more of a kind of a muscle memory you build up in match situations. So if you're off the match circuit, yeah, you're not playing, like, I mean, I'm not meaning training matches, I mean tournament matches.
Yep.
If you're playing regular tournament matches, you're getting up that kind of muscle of like, okay, in this situation, I need to go to this kind of, resort in my head or, physically, or you have kind of that built up. But if you're pretty cold, like there's been 4 months, 1 year, 3 years since you played a tournament match, it feels like you're a beginner again, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really stark, that contrast.
It really is a muscle. That's a perfect way of putting it, right? Because like if you lift every single day, if you're going through the body workout, body circuit, you're gonna gain muscle. And if you keep up with that, even on a somewhat regular basis, like maybe not lift every single day, maybe lift 3 times a week, something somewhat regular, you're still gonna have that strength. You're still gonna have that muscle, and you can still show it off. But take into effect muscle atrophy if you don't if you don't eat right or if you don't work out for 3 months straight. Yeah, you're going to lose that muscle fairly quickly, and then you got to build it up again before it becomes a more regular thing.
Do you have like a goal for your game? I mean, like you playing on the real tennis looks like a lot of fun. Obviously, it's not like a circuit, but it's like it adds
Yeah,
extra spice.
it's not a circuit, but it still matters. And depending on your view of like what it feels like to play in front of 3 or 4 cameras, what it feels like to play a tennis match that's going to be viewed by tens of thousands of people that actually care about amateur tennis, um, I would say it can actually have more pressure. I guess obviously there's not really much traveling, especially because the club is 7 minutes away from me. Um, Traveling does adds to the pressure. But for me, I think it does have some extra spice. And for my goal, I have revenge stories. I guess like I lost to Cole, I lost to Michael. I have a few other losses out there that I'm not going to discuss because it's not published yet. But those are my I guess my minor goals. Like is to go head hunting and beat certain types of people. But eventually, and this is going to take a lot more planning. I have been looking at the ITF circuit possibility for the past 18 months. So I at least want to try that, preferably in Spain, just because I like red clay the best, believe it or not, as an American. But I want to see what my first few tournaments are going to be like, and then I could set a more concrete goal from there to be like, ranked top 10 in my division, or whatever. So I just don't know what that specific goal is quite yet in terms of the ITF senior circuit.
Yeah, but you seem to have a strong dedication and also like inspiration to keep improving. How do you handle like if you have a tough loss, whether it's real tennis or something else,
Oh,
how do you handle that?
I go home and drink a bottle of vodka. I'm joking. I don't drink a bottle of vodka. It's whiskey, believe it or not. But I actually like losing because it's a reality check. And that's kind of that's that's formulated because there's only one person that could beat me in my circle of friends that's around my age. And I really like playing him because I like the thrill. I like the possibility of losing. It really gets me going. But if I lose against someone that I believe I shouldn't have, especially if it's a bad score line, that motivates me even more to fix the things that I messed up on, to improve the stuff that I already do pretty well. Because next time I play him, the mentality of me, at least internally, that you guys could probably see it a little bit, is that I'm not only gonna beat this guy, I'm just gonna embarrass him in terms of scoreline because I'm like I get mad, but I take it out in the correct way of improving. It's not like I want to walk away from tennis. That's not one. I don't think that's the right attitude because you're always going to have bad losses, just like you're always going to have good wins. But also, the losses motivate me to train harder, to work out harder, to eat better, and just to be a little bit more angry and a little bit have a bigger fire in my gut, in my heart, to be able to walk out next time I play that guy and just absolutely embarrass him.
Yeah, it's a strong feeling to have. When you talked about eating well, and often in your videos you mention some fast food that
Yeah.
fucked you up, to say the least. Is that real or is it more like
So
a funny thing to
no, so
portray?
it was real, right? So I think when I appeared on Essential Tennis, um, wow, that was a long time ago, wasn't it? That was right right at the height of the pandemic. So let's say summer of 2020. Yeah, that was 3.5 years ago. I just turned 30 years old, so my metabolism was still really good, and I was still teaching a lot of tennis outside because most public courts were available during the pandemic. Obviously, I'm not going to get too much into that because every country's politics is different, but I was eating a lot of fast food because I could get away with it. I was still young, I was still healthy. But I think right around when I was 31 and a half or 32, my metabolism greatly slowed down. So like now I'm eating a lot better. But back when it was back when I was a fresh face on Essential Tennis, yeah, that actually was 100% true. McDonald's, Taco Bell, Qdoba, if you have heard of it, which is kind of like Chipotle, a lot of fast food junk. But I'm eating a lot better now. So that that actually was true when it first started.
Yeah, and that food is a huge thing. I mean, for me, sleep is one of the most important, especially like for playing a tennis match the next day.
Yep.
But also like if you eat pretty bad or too close to the match, it can really take like a whole set before you're even feeling normal again, right?
Or if that, like if you overeat, you might be screwed the entire singles match. Doubles really, it's not the same. But undereating is also a big factor as well. So always have one or two bananas with you during the match in case you undereat. A bar of chocolate, or two if you guys want that boost of energy via sugar, which is a simple carb. I forgot what it was, but also for me, sleeping's not big of an issue because unless I'm traveling for a tennis tournament, I typically work during the workday. So if I'm sleep deprived or if I'm feeling tired, I'll just take like anywhere between a 30-minute to a 45-minute nap, and that typically fixes everything. And I have energy that lasts me through the entire tennis match. So sleep isn't really that big of an issue for me unless I'm traveling for a tennis tournament.
Yeah, it depends a little bit on like I'm not a good napper, but it's like resting a bit is usually good. But some people can nap like just by
Oh,
a click of a thumb, you know.
I can fall asleep at any time.
Oh, that's
I
perfect.
love naps. Yeah,
That's a
I
blessing.
know it's biological too, right? So it's not inherent in everybody, unfortunately. But naps are such a good feeling of just that small REM cycle of like anywhere between 15 minutes to maybe an hour. You wake up and you're good to go. You're not drowsy. Obviously, if you nap for 2 hours, that might be a bit of an issue. But a nice 1 hour nap or less, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen it up close. When it comes to your tennis background, like when did you start? You were an early starter. You quit during some point, or how does your tennis life look like?
I started. Well, I picked up a racket in kindergarten, and my parents were like, "Yeah, that's probably not for you." And then so that was like maybe like 2 weeks, and I don't even remember that. But I started playing tennis again around third grade. So in the States, that's anywhere between 8 to 9 years old if you're in third grade. And they found out, even though I was very small and I was very chubby, believe it or not. And then I lost the chubbiness because I was playing a lot of tennis. I was actually really talented to the point where I had a Midwest ranking for my age group, and I almost had a national ranking just because I was quick. Back then, I had a big forehand for my size. I knew how to hit topspin. I knew how to hit a slice slash side spin serve, which is apparently huge if you're under 10 years old. And I had pretty good hand-eye coordination. But I didn't have the mental game, so that Midwest and national ranking kind of dropped off around 12 to like 14, especially when these kids start to hit puberty. And I was a late bloomer too. I was very, very undersized up until I was a junior in high school. So, I would say, yeah, I was an underachiever. And part of that, most of that is because I didn't know how to construct a tennis point. I just knew how to hit a big forehand. I knew how to keep my two-handed backhand back then inside the court. But as soon as people started having cross-court rally patterns at 14 and under, I was screwed. So yeah, I guess I was an underachiever. And then I played Division III college for University of Wisconsin Whitewater. I played on the team for 2 years, and then I got cut my junior year because they had strong recruits, and I was at the bottom of the roster, which is fine. I still appreciate the stuff that they did for me, and I still keep in good touch with them. But I didn't get good at tennis again until I was 24, and that's because I'm an adult. I have a 9 to 5 now. I have a career. I have my degree. Okay, what else am I gonna do with my life other than just be a good employee and provide the company with value and money? I gotta have passions outside. So that's where tennis stepped in. I'm like, oh, okay, this is how you construct a tennis point. This is the mentality of what it's like to actually win as not only a competitor but as an adult. So yeah, I personally did not get better until I was 24, 25, which is not exactly normal, but I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest.
I think sometimes like getting back to tennis, like what I did as well, and after quitting as a kid, or just not losing losing a little bit of that passion and doing other things, I think it gets you even more, it gives you even more
Yep.
passion, right? So you feel stronger about the sport. Well, as we talked about before we jumped on the recording mode, is that if you've been coaching your whole life, or if you've been playing pro, it didn't really work out, and then you go into coaching, it's not really your choice to go into coaching a lot of the time. It's kind of like a necessity because maybe you don't have another job waiting for you, or
Yep.
you don't have education or something. So that is kind of reluctant work. And
Hmm.
there you can really lose your passion. While I feel like if you're a bit later to the game, whether it's you started early or you just started late, it feels like it's so much more fun to play tennis. Like it's always
It
fun.
is a lot of it too. I've been thinking about this for like the past like actually like 7 years. Like not only when did I get good, but why did I get good? A lot of it is actually maturity, and look at any scientific study when it comes to the hormones in the brains of the human body. Men mature much later in life, both physically and also mentally, compared to women. So the idea that, okay, I'm more quote unquote mature because I still have some, childish tendencies, which is I fully embrace, but the idea that I have a self responsibility and I understand that if I win a tennis match in singles as an adult, it's all me. I can't blame my coach. I can't blame my parents. I can't blame the wind. I can't blame the weather. I can't blame the strings, the racket, anything. It's me. That's why I love singles so much in tennis, not only the sport, but like specifically singles, because everything that you do in the tennis, the result of that singles tennis match, you cannot blame anyone else because your opponent is also under the same limelight and is playing under the exact same conditions. You can't blame your coach. You can only blame yourself, both in winning the match or losing the match, or maybe even somewhere in between of like how you perform. But it's all you. It's all the individual. It's the purest, in my opinion. And I'd be more than happy to debate anybody about this. But singles tennis match is the purest form of sport out there, more so than basketball, because basketball is a team sport and there's a coach there, more so than football, because it's a team sport. It's a solo sport. It's an absolute beautiful thing, and there's a reason why I really, really like working with former athletes in terms of, even in the corporate world, because they understand the responsibility and the training and the discipline of getting the job done.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, you can compare it in many ways to like martial arts, I think. Like, because it's like UFC, but you're on a court with a ball, right? So it's like
Exactly.
you're alone. There's another guy, he wants to beat you. You need to beat him, but you also need, I think Novak said this best. I talked to Nikola Racic last week, and it's like he mentioned that, it's about defeating yourself. Like Novak said that so much. He's fighting himself on the court, and that's why he's so strong mentally. He has found a way to really visualize that fight against himself and try to be the best version of himself that he can muster that day. But it's a lot about that, like being there and bringing your best game, whatever it is that day, right?
Yeah. And what's nice is like you break down a singles tennis match into its simplest form. And I always tell my students this. I always tell my students this at one point in time, whether they've had one lesson with me or if they've had, 10. And I still teach tennis on the side, these really talented high schoolers. And I mainly just hit with them. But I still give them pointers. In a singles tennis match, there's three opponents. There's yourself, because you have to in some way conquer yourself philosophically in order to face your other opponent who's across the net, the actual opponent themselves. And then you have the other variables like the net and the line. But the most important opponent you have to overcome is that first one. You have to overcome stuff that you do. You have to have the discipline to, you know, grab, not grab. You have to have the discipline to get one more ball back. You have to have the discipline of, being patient, of hitting a ball cross court rather than slapping it down the line. You have to be able to say no to your internal tendencies or wants before you can even face the person across the net. So in a way, yes, your biggest opponent is yourself. It's not the person across the tennis net.
How do you deal with like when you're playing competitive? Like, if do you have, because I mean, tennis is a weird thing, you could say. Like most matches, you call your own lines, right? I mean, there's is rarely that you have like
Yes.
an umpire, right? So,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that can trip people, like, and make them mentally unstable. And it's one of those things that also shows a little bit of gentlemanship. Some people cheat on purpose, most people do not. But it's like,
I mean, we could, so like let's see. Out of the I would say 10 matches that I've been featured in on Essential Tennis and Real Tennis, I made just one bad line call in favor of myself. Obviously, I didn't mean to do it, but I still felt really bad. The overwhelming majority of my incorrect line calls is giving the benefit of the doubt to the opponent. Calling a ball in when it was actually out because it was out by like an inch and a half. It was a fast first serve. But the idea that a majority of tennis matches, a majority of competitive tennis matches, is called by the actual competitors themselves, really, really brings out the fact that you can see, and I would argue judge the person that you're facing against based on their line calls and also their attitude. So it is very different. There's no line judges for 99.9% of these tennis matches, no matter how competitive they are. But it is very special that there's no referee, there's no umpire like there is in MMA or boxing or football or any major sport in Europe and the States, for these athletes, these tennis players, to call their own lines. So it is, and to be honest, I really can't tell how much different it is, because tennis is the by far the only sport I've played anywhere near the level I'm at right now. I've never really played basketball. I've never really played soccer. For me, it's always been tennis.
yeah, no, it's an odd thing, but it's like I also agree that it shows something about your opponent. Like, I mean, I can sometimes lose respect. I don't argue calls, and I always try to be as fair as I can. So, I mean, sometimes obviously you can have a visual problem where you don't see the ball properly and you judge it in or out based on that.
Correct, but even whether or not it's intentional, in my opinion, and this is a hot topic debate, that's still hooking, or that's still cheating in my opinion, because you always got to give. But there is some nuance to that, and that's a very, very large gray area in my opinion. But that's going to be another 2-hour podcast if we go down that rabbit hole.
No, but it's interesting because, like, you always try to be the fairest you can be, and it's for me it doesn't matter that much if I lose or win. Like, it's not like it's not prize money. For example, in the ITF seniors events, it's not prize money, but you can have opponents that's gonna argue. I would say 10% of the points. Like, they're gonna argue a lot of calls, even things that are pretty much, out or
Even on clay, like if you get a, and obviously I haven't done these tournaments yet, and I hope to in 2024, this next year. But like even if it's, let's assume clay, right? Because
yeah.
that's a majority of these tennis tournaments are being played at. Even if you show them the ball mark that's like literally this far out from the line, they'll still argue it.
Yeah, well, there's some skepticism towards because it could be like a question if there's two marks close, for example, that's where it can happen. It's like,
Okay,
oh, was this mark? It wasn't that mark. That's happened to me, for example, when I called the ball out. That I was I'm pretty sure. If I'm not sure, it's in, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, so
Has any of your opponents during one of these tennis matches in this ITF senior, have they ever like have you ever showed them the mark and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're right"? Did they ever like
no, no, no,
retract?
that never happened. They just,
Really?
yeah, never happened. Right.
Even if you think even if your call is very, very clear and the person they just keep going with it, they never
Yeah,
apologize.
I think the people usually that question it, they are like are their mindset is that they're very stubborn on that they're right, right? So it depends a little bit. Like for example, I played an open tournament last 2 weeks ago, and that was like all the matches were great. Like everybody's super fair. There was not one question on any line call, right? It's like
Good.
that's the perfect tournament.
Yeah,
So it's not it happens. It depends. Some people are a bit trickier than others when it comes to like judging or feeling like they're more negative in general. I've seen
sure,
that
sure.
in some guys. Yeah.
Well, I'm a pretty negative guy, in case you haven't noticed, especially with my outbursts. But this also bleeds into my corporate life as a software engineer, right? I am always, always, always open to the possibility of me being wrong. In fact, I'm wrong every day at work. Like, okay, like what's wrong with this program? Why is this program breaking? So that, I guess, based on what you're telling me, that I'm one of the very few instances of like, a high level tennis player that's not exactly stubborn. Because like as much as I want to win, I will never, ever, ever, purposely or intentionally, uh, put my character at jeopardy in an honest fashion just for like $1,000 prize money or for just an important tennis match. I would never do that because that's my character. I wouldn't say a reputation because reputation with the internet, anything can happen now. If you could bad talk anybody, but that's not worth my character. That tennis match, that prize money, it's not worth it. So that's a shame that people would do that. But
I would say
yeah,
it's relatively rare, but it's happened, and sometimes like I've because I started playing these like last year, and I was a little bit shocked a few times where it's like, oh, you want to win this badly, right? Like I'm
yeah,
a bit like, wow, this is a exaggerated reaction to this, and I'm like, I mean, this is the same for me. I'm this integrity and being authentic and being honest is number one for me. So I
yeah.
don't care what happens in a tennis match, right?
I
So
think integrity is a better word because like when it comes to character, like people, there are some people out there. I would say in the comment section, about 5% of the people don't like my outbursts, but you cannot fault that overwhelming majority of the time I make the correct line call, or I would even give my opponent a line call. But when it comes to my outbursts or yelling, okay, that's a gray area, right? That's behavior. But when it comes to like the actual integrity of calling your own lines, it's very, you have to dig really, really deep into the archives of my video footage of me purposely or me making a bad line call that favors me. And again, there's only one out there, and that was against the guy that is the only one that is able to consistently beat me around my age, and he's a hell of a guy too. He's also improved a lot. His name's Joey, by the way. Super nice guy, and he's the one that's always been kicking my ass at this day and age, which I'm happy to see him, do that. But I've got some work to do to, get the upper hand against him in the near future.
yeah, that's always
So
good. Yeah.
so integrity is probably the better word for that. So yeah, I mean, and that's probably shocking. I wouldn't say that's shocking in juniors because you're not mentally mature. You don't understand what it's like. And I'm assuming as a junior too, you have that small possibility of, hey, I could become a tennis pro if I win these many matches, or if I win this tournament, or if I get these points. But like, you know, are you in your 40s? I'm
Yeah.
33. Yeah.
Early, very early 40s. Yeah.
So yeah, so us, 30 plus and still in really good shape. We're not delusional. We want to be the best tennis player that we can be, but if you think that we're going to be appearing in the second round of a Grand Slam, no, that's crazy. But these kids still have that
Yeah.
possibility. They don't have that realization. They don't understand what it's like to face off against people that have been training this all their life. So Yeah, that's a shame that happens, but yeah, it's probably an age thing that you're probably a little shocked.
Yeah, exactly. No, 100%. Because I played opens in Malta and in Spain as well, right? Where you play maybe someone who's 15 years old or 16 years old, like a good player, but usually they have a bit of a temperament because tennis is a, psychotic sport sometimes. We all
Oh yeah,
feel that,
very.
like the stress of tennis is high. And when you're a young kid, you know yourself. It's like you feel losses are huge. Like it's a huge, it ruins your whole day, maybe week. I don't know. Like it's a bigger thing than if you're an adult, you have other things to focus on. Like
Yep.
in the whole, you know, uh, life as such, it doesn't matter much, right? And you
Hmm.
will be stronger. But as a kid, you don't think about that, so you have to give them a little bit more leeway to misbehave or to do some odd calls or whatever. I think that's more normal, right, when you're younger.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just because you don't know how to handle loss or defeat. Like, in the grand scheme of things, okay, let's say as a 15-year-old, you lose, you're the number one seed, but you lose in the second round to someone that's not seeded. A temper tantrum is not, I mean, I wouldn't say it's acceptable, but it's kind of expected, I guess, unless you have a very, very mature kid. But if you take that same scenario and put it to, let's say, a 29-year-old, okay, a tennis match or a tennis tournament loss of an upset, that's not as bad as, let's say, something very tragic like, your mom or your dad or a loved one like dying or being hospitalized. There's other things to worry about. Yeah, it sucks. But in the grand scheme of things, as you said, it's not even close to what tragedies you encounter in real life.
100%. And but you do film a lot of match play on your channel now, and you did reviews before we get into that. But do you notice like your improvement from filming, like from recording your own sessions, right?
Yeah, so this is one of the philosophies that Ian told me about as not, I wouldn't say necessarily tennis coach, but just as a tennis player that's looking to improve no matter what level you are. The idea of you, the image of you hitting a ball in the stream of consciousness of your first person is very, very different than what is objectively happening through a camera lens. So your best tennis coach in terms of like who's ready available, who knows what to do, what strokes you're messing up on is actually yourself, because with the wealth of the internet now, with all these massive major tennis channels of like, oh, this is how you hit a forehand properly. And they're almost all of them are correct, I would say. But everybody has a phone now. There's nothing stopping you from buying a $15 tripod and video recording yourself even just hitting a ground stroke. It doesn't even have to be a tennis match. A tennis match, I would argue, is kind of the next step. But you have to view yourself like in reality of like what you actually look like when hitting a ground stroke, or when playing out a ground stroke point, or playing a tennis match that actually matters. Because I guarantee you, anybody that's listening to this, and I'm part of this too, the image that you have of you playing a tennis match or hitting a particular stroke versus what is actually happening is 100% incorrect. It's very, very rarely anywhere close. So I would argue that anybody that's listening to this that hasn't done so already, buy a crappy tripod that has a good angle, and then just video yourself just even hitting a forehand or a backhand, and see how massive the difference is between what you think you look like and what the camera is actually showing you on your phone playback.
Yeah, I think it's 100% true. I've seen that when I play with people. Some people just they know you from the channel. They come to Spain or maybe Malta before, and they want to play you partly because maybe they want to be a part of the channel. I've
Yeah,
noticed that as
and there's
well.
nothing wrong with that, right? It's
No,
it's nice. It's nice that, oh, I get to see myself not only on screen, but other people can see that I'm on the YouTube channel Tennis Nerd, just hitting or even playing a set or a tiebreak.
yeah, it's a fun thing, and I enjoy it. But some of them are almost like shocked when
Hmm.
they see the footage, or I send them the footage, or they like, oh, because they weren't used to, they're not used to recording themselves, so they're like,
Yeah,
oh, is it that's how it looks? I thought
yeah.
it was like Roger. I'm like,
No.
it's for everyone, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Roger Federer, and this is the thing that I've taught all of my students that are either in college or high school. You don't want to. You never want to, in my opinion, you never want to model your forehand after Roger Federer, because keep in mind, he grew up in a time that was kind of like serve and volley, and he just did a really good job transitioning that into like the power baseline tennis. The Andy Roddick, Leighton Hewitt, Marat Safin was probably the generational one that bridged the gap along with Roger Federer. But I would, and I'm not really a big Novak fan, but I think he is the greatest tennis player of all time because he has the most singles grand slams as a male. I think Novak Djokovic's technique is much more accommodating for 99.9% of the people versus something like a Roger Federer or a Grigor Dimitrov, or even I would argue Rafa Nadal. Nadal's technique is pretty extreme for most mere mortals like you and I. Um, but one thing I want to talk about is not only the technique, but also the pace. Because if you're recording yourself from a top down angle, it's very hard to describe how heavy the ball is until you're literally across the net. So people always comment that, like, oh, it doesn't look that big on camera. And I'm talking about tennis, nothing phallic. But if they're facing me across the net, they always comment most of the time that they were surprised how heavy my ball is compared to what is on camera. I don't know if you've had any experience with that with people that have never recorded themselves playing a tennis match, but I'm assuming they say the same thing, right? Because you hit a pretty heavy ball, right?
Yeah, I can hit a heavy ball. It depends on the racket sometimes, but
Yeah.
no, but it's like, for example, yeah, it's hard. You can't read too much. I think people watch pro level tennis and they make a lot of judgments based on, like, watching it from bird's eye view, which is
Yep.
very bad for seeing the pace. But they can also judge YouTubers like
Yep.
myself or you or Ian or whoever, right? So, and everybody likes to judge these days. But it's very different and saying something from like a keyboard and actually going, okay, I'm gonna try to play this guy, or
Yeah.
please see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, the keyboard warriors are they always get me. Um I don't think from essential tennis or real tennis any type of negative commentators, and you guys can negatively comment all you want, but like they've never backed it up. Ian has extended an invite from some of these negative commenters on some of these videos saying, "Hey, play Ian Westerman," and he's not the highest level player on that channel, not by a long bit, and part of it is because of his shoulder. But he's offered some of these naysayers in the comment section to fly them to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, play a tennis match, and if they win, Ian pays for everything, and none of them have ever taken that offer. So a lot of them are just scared chickenless. So they feel high and mighty because they're behind a computer screen. But when it comes to like putting your money where your mouth is, which I always do, they've never stepped up.
No, and it's I think it's like they don't realize also how intimidating. I mean, just the idea of that is like, okay, I write something mean, which is, why are you doing that? That's just stupid, right? Well, why
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
you keep it to yourself or write something constructive, right? That's my opinion in life in general. But if you want to do that, you have a bad day, you want to write something shitty, and okay, then you have to then, like, let's say, travel to Milwaukee and put your money where your mouth is, and it's like in front of cameras, in front of people
Hmm.
who are like already like, oh, okay, maybe they don't like this guy because he already commented something shitty. And you're playing against a guy who now wants to beat you, whether it's you or Ian or anyone else, right, on
Yeah.
the channel. And it's like they should think about that before they say something. That's
Oh
the
yeah,
thing. Like,
one
you
hundred
shouldn't
percent.
have to get to that situation where
Yeah,
you're like, oh, you want to come? Hey, here's
yeah,
tickets, and we're set it up, right?
yeah,
It's so
yeah.
funny.
They're scared. And a lot of that is maturity in terms of like I wouldn't even say maturity. I think ignorance is a better word because some of these players, like for example, Olive TV, she played on real tennis, and she had close matches, but she never won. But she hits a heavy ball. It's pretty insane. But like I made the offer that if she beats me, I will pay for her flight home, which I believe was around or round trip flight home, which is around like $800 to $1,000. But that was fun for me, right? Because like I think I beat her like 6-3, 6-3 or something like that. But it was fun because like it's probably one of the best rushes I've ever gotten as a tennis player because there's something on the line, not only in terms of camera or pride or your status as a tennis player, but if I lose something. So I guess I'm one of the very few people that like would actually back that up. But then again, it's because I live a semi-public life in terms of being in the tennis industry. But any negative commenter in the section of whether it's Dill Plays or Winston Do or Tennis Nerd or Essential Tennis Real Tennis, I'd be more than happy to kind of take them on in any type of challenge. I'd be more than happy to do that. But a lot of that is people just hiding behind a keyboard and just acting
Yeah,
tougher than they actually are. But
yeah, you
also
shouldn't really. Yeah.
And then the fact that like, okay, so my UTR is like 8.8. Let's say I'm a 9 UTR. Any tennis player that is anywhere near an 8 UTR and has recorded themselves playing a tennis match, they would never say that in a serious manner because they know what it's like. They know what it's like,
Exactly.
how
I
hectic
think
it
that's
is.
generally it. Like, I think it's from a lack of knowledge. I think it's also based, I mean, related to that. They did a survey in the US. Maybe you saw that. Like, people think that they can take games of pro players, right? Like, regular amateurs thought that they, quite on a high percentage, thought they could actually win a game or
Well,
two against
well, I,
pros.
I did hear about that, and Andy Roddick made a comment about that. Like that's literally insane or delusional. I don't know what adjective he used, but what? First of all, what's the definition of a pro tennis player? Right? We have to define that. So, is that people in the top 200 for ATP singles?
That's good. I don't think they define that.
Yeah.
Like, it's maybe someone living from tennis. I would say that's a pro tennis player, right?
Well, in that case, Ian Westerman would be a pro tennis player because
Ah, yeah,
he's
yeah,
old.
true, true. But
So,
like
so
competitive
you
tennis,
need
like
you
no
need to
pro.
define the statistic. I've started to realize that as an engineer, you need a definition. So
Yeah,
technically speaking, I won a $500 cash tournament. It was technically open, so I'm technically a pro tennis player. I have a YouTube channel technically as a pro tennis player. But let's say ATP 200 for men's. That is 100% delusional. Like you have to be like a 5.5 rated NTRP tennis player, or maybe even I believe that would translate to like a 12 UTR around to even have a chance of taking a single game off these guys because if you leave a ball short twice in a row, you're dead.
yeah,
It's
exactly. I
completely
mean, they
delusional.
might make a mistake, one or two, but they will never like give you
No.
four mistakes in a game, right? So it's like people don't realize how. I mean, tennis is a game where levels are drastic, right? So
Yep.
a 0.5 NTRP or a 1 UTR, whatever, that's a huge difference in that. That can be like 6 love, 6 love in some cases, or
Yep.
at least 6-1, 6-2, or something where it's not even competitive, right? So
No.
people don't understand that it's like these small levels. There's so many levels to it. And if you are a 3-5 NTRP, which means like you're a pretty intermediate player, maybe you started, 2 years ago, whatever,
Yep.
it's gonna be impossible to get games against 4-5s, right? It's like that's just so hard, right? Like a three
Yeah.
five doesn't win many games against a 4-5, and that's still
No.
like not even pro level, right? So it's like
Unless you're like a 6'6" player, a really tall tennis player, and just rely on your serve. Yeah, you
yeah,
could get a
yeah,
game, but that's based on play style. But for the majority of people, yeah, a 3.5 will never get a game off of a 4.5, if the ratings are correct. That's
true.
why I like the UTR a lot better because it's more there's a more gray area. It's not necessarily buckets. There's levels in between, like a 10 and a
Yeah,
9.
it's
So
more granular in that sense. I think it shows more about like also it seems like a very good system UTR. Like, and also they have the circuits, they have the UTR events, so prize money and stuff like that. Seems
the
great.
issue is UTR is only uh recognized well in the United States. I don't think it's taken a hold in Europe yet.
No, no,
Um,
I'm really no.
you guys might have a system in Europe, but it doesn't translate well to the US. But the
It probably
UTR should
depends.
make a move to Europe. It would be nice.
I think, yeah, we need to get one international system because, like, if I look, I mean, NTRP is something I've used because I have a large American audience. I think the system is pretty decent because you can, I mean, with this, you can actually give yourself like a score approximately based on like
Yeah.
the writing there. Could be tough to do that, but at least it's there. UTR is better in my opinion as well. But if you go to Europe, you have like different system in Italy, Spain, Switzerland, whatever. I mean, like it's
Oh, it's based on country too, so it's not even
yeah.
like a European
No,
system.
no, no, no. There's different systems in each
Oh,
country. So
okay.
like, oh, I'm a level 2 player in Italy. It's a completely different thing in the UK or in this, and it's like a different system. So some have 2.2, some have 10, some have. So it's like we need to put like a system that works kind of more internationally, and I think the UTR seems to be the best option that we have right now. So
Yeah,
hopefully they will get a bigger, take a bigger chunk of that.
I hope so too, and it's mainly not for the adults, but I think it's going to benefit once UTR system takes a hold of all of Europe. The UTR system is going to greatly benefit the college recruits, like the 17, 18-year-old boys and girls that want to play American tennis, right? And also, just know what it's like to have an education and live in the States for 4 or 5 years. Because the first thing coaches will ask recruits, college coaches will ask American recruits in high school is, hey, what's your UTR? Not how well you do in, your high school tennis team or how well you do in state. they ask what your UTR is, and that's a very, very accurate representation of whether or not it's even possible for this person to be on the tennis team, or like not only that, but like where on the lineup they would play in the top 6 roster if that's the case. So yeah, I'll talk to UTR because I work with them part time as well to see like what the roadmap is like if they could disclose that for getting a good hold in Europe. But also, you could benefit people like me, like, hey, I'm an 8.8 UTR. What master's level ITF senior circuit should I go to? Should I go M100, M200, M700? It would be a good indicator because, again, I don't want to be blown out in an master's 1000 in the first round. I don't want to lose 0-1 to someone that, was top 200 formerly in the ATP. But I also don't want to be, dropping only 4 games to win an M100 or M200 because I'm traveling from
Yeah,
the States to, let's say, Serbia or Spain. I want to have a good competitive tennis match,
yeah.
a
I
good
think that
competitive tennis
that's the
tournament.
key for
Yeah,
everyone, really. It's like that tennis is the best when it's competitive. Like no match is really that. I mean, it's fun to win, but it's like it's not that much fun to win 6-1, 6-1. It's not gonna
no,
be like a great match unless you're having the best day of your life and you're just hitting the lines and you're like smiling, you know.
yeah,
But overall, it's not as satisfying as playing like a 3-set match and winning
no,
that,
no,
for
no.
example, or even like sometimes losing a 3-setter, you feel a bit pissed, but you got a really good workout and you were challenged to the max, which is fantastic, right? So
Yeah,
it feels
exactly. Not only are you burning enough calories, but you guys had really good points. You understood that almost if you split sets that anybody could have won that day, it just didn't go your way. But also you're kind of living vicariously through the person you lost to in that round. Oh, how far can that person that I lost to in 3 sets go throughout the tournament? Because
yeah.
like, let's say that person got to the final. Well, it's not so much of a jump to say that if 1 or 2 points went your way and you won, you also would have gotten to the final because of the result that you're seeing in front of you.
Very true. But you're also a gear guy. I wanted to get to that. Like you
Ah,
love a lot of course, it's
oh yeah,
tennis nerd. I'm
yeah.
sometimes trying to limit the gear talk, but in your case, I think it makes a lot of sense. You're big into stringing, like you string your own rackets. You have a stringing machine in the back there.
Yep.
Looks very nice. You have some reels on the wall. So where are you with your gear right now? Like, what are you racket are you using, and what string? Do you have a standard string? And how's your experience testing gear been, right?
Oh,
The
I,
last
I really love testing gear. As an engineer, I like to tinker around with stuff. So, right now, my current setup, and I don't know if you did like a review on this because you do reviews, but it's not like how often do you pump out gear review? Is it for me? It's about once a week.
Yeah, I
Do,
try to do like once or twice a week, depending on like it depends on my schedule. Like, well, now I'm doing testing 2 different rackets. I'm testing the Percept rackets from Yonex. I mean, 2 different lines, so there's 3 rackets, and then Pacific rackets, and then I have some strings like the biodegradable Velocity string, and I got some more Torline strings that I'm gonna test as well. So
oh,
there's always things going on, but I'm trying to do once or twice a week gear. It's okay.
Toraline sent me a package. So I gotta do that. It's actually right there. So,
Uh,
so for me, but you mainly focus on rackets 75% of the time, correct?
I would say, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it's been like. But I know people are very interested in strings, so you should do a little bit of that as well, right? And shoes as well, of course.
Yeah. So for me, I'm 75% string and then 25% shoes, tennis rackets, a little bit of everything else. So right now, I was lucky enough to get 4 Yonex Ezone 98 DRs, and I love that racket. It's Yonex needs they need to bring that back. So I got on eBay. It's obviously slightly used. I have 4 grommet sets when the grommets wear out. And then the string, I kind of came back to the string because I initially hated it on my Wilson Blades 18 by 20. I love the Solinco Tour Bite. It's very, very firm, but with a relatively softer racket and a lighter racket with a Yonex E-Zone DR98. I don't have arm, elbow, or wrist issues. It's actually fine. It's stiff, but it's actually fine. And I could just swing out on that thing because that thing is a spin monster. But you could also hit it pretty flat, and it's still going to go pretty deep and with pretty good accuracy. So you've hit with the Yonex E-Zone DR, right?
Yeah, yeah, the DR. That's one of those rackets that people like. They scour the internet. Like they go
Yeah.
everywhere to find this stick, and it's. I mean, it's a legendary racket. I think that's where the kind of the the there it is. That's the yeah. They did one in blue, and that was the first
Yep.
generation. I think that was one. and it's a beautiful frame, and it plays really nicely.
It's a little
Yeah.
light. It's a little light for me. I got to put some lead tape on it, but
Where do you? How much do you put? Like you put it at 12 or something?
um, I would put it uh at 10 and 2, I believe.
Ah, yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
Because this like it's and this is kind of a preview. This is a perfect racket in any way except that it's a little bit too light and it's a little bit too whippy. Therefore, it makes it just a little bit unstable. So putting some lead tape, I think, would help with that. I haven't done that yet because I like to review, which I'll do a review on this relatively soon, in stock form. Just because if you open the can of worms to like modification, leather grip, handle weight, tape on the head, it's just gonna be a 50-minute video, and it's gonna take me 2 months to make a review on that. So I always do it in stock form.
Yeah, you should always do that, and then you can do the customization later. But it's a brilliant racket. I think there's several pros using it in various different paint jobs and cosmetics and stuff like that. And it has that pretty dense string bed, but it still produces some good spin. Like it
Yep.
has pretty good spin potential. So I think it's very balanced, and I think that's what they got right. And the E-Zone line after that it's a bit of up and down. Now the latest D-Zone is pretty good, I would say. But this one is the one where people are most interested in, I would say still.
I'm not a fan of the latest E-Zone, both the 2022 version and the 2020. Just because it feels like Yonex is changing the E-Zone line into like almost like a Babolat Pure Drive. For me, it's just way too powerful. It's way too powerful. So my question is, what's your setup right now?
I'm all over the place as usual, but I use the Radical now, the latest Radical MP and Lynx Tour. That's been my like, or Hawk Power. Those two strings I've been playing with, but
So
it's fun always to change. I
Links,
use test rackets in
yeah.
matches as well.
So that's your setup in the latest ITF tournament that you went
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So Link's tour is actually pretty similar to Stelinko Tour Bite,
Yeah.
correct? It's like I would say 90% the same. I don't know what the exact difference is, but they're pretty similar. So my question is, why aren't you playing with this, given you know how good it actually can be, or some sort of modded version of this?
Right now I don't have any. I would love to retest it because I mean I tested it a bunch of years ago. Then always like for me it's like I always have new sticks. So I've had new prestiges now that I've been testing. That's coming out in a few weeks, and then the Percept. It's a good racket actually. The Percept. What happened with Yonex rackets, in my opinion, whether you like it or not, is that if you look at the DR, it's very direct. You feel the ball 100%,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
What happened is they started with the VDM tech, which they put like some technology in the handle, whether that's foam filling or what it is, and that takes away a little bit of the responsiveness of the frame. I mean, you can like that, you can not like that. It's maybe a bit better for comfort, but they all feel pretty muted now. All
Yep.
the Yonex rackets, So that sometimes is something I struggle with. Although I do like their products, but it's like sometimes like with the latest V Core, I thought it was way too muted, like or just springy. When the ball just sails off and it's like a little bit hard to, determine where it's going.
The V Core, the red racket, right? The
Yeah,
98.
the red ones, yeah,
It
the
it,
spinny.
it it felt very flimsy and very unstable on contact when I was swinging. But I only had one string set up, so it could have been the
Yeah,
string. But I'm not going to tinker around with that too much. But it was very fast. It had pretty good spin potential. But it was just way too. It wasn't light because I know the static weight is like the previous versions as well. But it just flexed in a wrong way, and it was just way too flimsy in my opinion. So I don't know if that's the same
flexible.
adjective we're using.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't like it. It felt very unstable because of that. But you know, balancing, having a dog now, balancing a 40-hour a week job, balancing being a 33-year-old single guy, still having a social life. Um, I always, I wouldn't say struggle, but I always have to discipline myself to like buckle down on a late night, write the script or edit or do something just because it is time consuming, especially with the editing.
yeah. The
That's
editing
always the
is
hardest.
a huge. People don't realize, like,
No,
I mean, they see a video, they think it's pretty easy. I mean, it's
no.
not that hard from a technical point of view, unless you're like, cult tennis, which is super pro at doing this stuff.
Yep, yep.
But even doing like pretty basic stuff is very time consuming because you want to get it right. Like it's your video, you want to make sure that the right points come across, and there's like an ownership of that, but it's also like time consuming in terms of you rewatching it, you're moving things around, you're highlighting your clips, whether that's match play or points play, whatever. It takes time.
Yeah. It's about other than playing tennis because that's what I already do. When it comes to pumping out a video, that's a review. editing is 75% of the time
Yeah.
of the stuff that you guys see in the background. So unless you guys are like a media undergrad, or you have your own YouTube channel, or you edit videos for fun, normal people do not understand how hard, how time consuming editing is.
Did you think about like getting a freelancer or something to send the stuff to?
It's not worth it. I'm only making, unless a video like, you know, does really, really well, I'm only making like $10 to $20 a video on ads. So
Yeah.
it doesn't make
No,
any
they're not
sense.
paying like that well, YouTube. People should know
No.
that as well. Like, unless you're a really big YouTuber, tennis is a pretty small niche, so it's not that easy to make huge amounts of money these days, right?
Well, it's nice for you, right? Tennis is a small niche, and specifically tennis equipment, kind of like what you and I are doing, but obviously
Yeah.
you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. It's easier to break into. It's a lot easier to break into
Yeah.
rather than something as general as video game or fashion or cooking. But yeah, for those of you guys out there that want to like break into the YouTube space or the YouTube tennis space, you cannot make a decent living off of YouTube ad monetization. You have to sell something that you own, whether it's t-shirts, online courses, or maybe even some blog posts
Yeah.
that you hide behind a paywall. That's how you make money. YouTube, the videos you guys see on YouTube, that's just a front. That's just purely 100% marketing. I mean, look at Ian, for example. His essential tennis and real tennis, that's just a front for his private clinics, and that's where most of the money is made for him.
Yeah, I think that's good to keep in mind. I think, I mean, for a guy like Felix from Tennis Brothers, who blew up, right? Like, he's crazy,
He's done
crazy views
crazy well.
and doing really well. I think for him, it adds a nice chunk of cash for him to travel and play ITFs and futures and stuff.
Well,
But for most people with more, normal followerships and views, it's tougher. It's
well,
more of
whether
a marketing thing or more for fun, right?
whether or not Felix from Tennis Brothers, whether or not he actually gets an IT or ATP singles point,
He
it
got
actually
one.
doesn't. Oh, he did
Yeah,
singles.
like last week. Yeah, yeah. I think it was
Okay,
last week.
let's retract that. So whether
Yeah,
or not he got one, and good for him, and he's improved dramatically. Because I
yeah,
remember watching his videos before he even hit like 20K subs. I'm like, oh, I think I could take this guy. And now I'm seeing him. Now I'm like, holy shit, this guy's a monster. Like he just goes after it. And he's what, 6'1"? He's like a perfect tennis build for a male
yeah.
singles player, right? He's lean, he's got muscle, he moves really well, he's tall, a little bit lanky. But whether or not he actually did get an ATP point, which he did, so congrats, Felix. He's already done stuff that not even people in the top 100 can physically do, and that's to make a profit of becoming a professional tennis player. Not in terms of prize money, but his ad monetization is probably really, really good right now, right? And also the stuff that he does behind, is it Patreon? Is that what he uses? Or
I think
something?
it's just like Phantom, which is like he has this sponsorships you can actually buy like a part of his revenue pool, right? From not from the YouTube, I think, but from like
Yeah.
prize money or whatever.
So
So
he's his own company then. He's basically
pretty
a
much
public
like, I mean,
company.
he's a young, smart business guy in a sense. He paired with a tennis player, so he has a great
Yeah.
future ahead of him. Even if tennis doesn't work out, like he can do YouTube channels, other YouTube channels. He can do something else. Like I think
Yeah.
this he has a good setup now for the rest
What
of
was
his
he?
life.
18 or 19, maybe 20? I mean, he's very
20 maybe.
mature. He's
Yeah,
very mature. I mean, the
yeah,
the idea of not only training to become a professional tennis player or the journey of being a professional tennis player, but editing, traveling, like not partying like I would have partied in his age, like being 20 years
same.
old and being, yeah, I mean, he's a very, very mature guy. And that maturity, whether or not he gets, let's say, into the top 100, well, that's a whole different story. That's the next step of his journey, I hope. Just the discipline of setting a goal, holding yourself accountable, making YouTube content and profiting off of it, and also making a company or two out of it, and having it be a good company from what I would speculate.
Yeah,
He's got a very bright future ahead of him. It's not even
yeah.
about tennis at this point. It's about, can he keep doing what he's doing with his 150,000 subs? What is he going to do with all that power? What is he going to do with all that influence? And hopefully it's going to be for the good rather than the bad. But I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's going to do well, whatever he does.
And I think it's good because he brings a new audience to tennis. So it's like I think
Yep.
a lot of people just see this as a more, I watch other YouTubers outside tennis because I mean I like YouTube as a format. I think it's pretty good. Like it's short videos. You can get some new ideas. You get some fresh stuff. Some of it's silly, like if I fill my pool with pennies, what happens? This stuff I'm not super into. But he gets a different type of audience than someone who goes to tennis TV and sees like highlights from the latest Chengdu ATP
Yep, yep.
final, right? So it's like that he reaches that different demographic with tennis. Tennis needs that badly, so I think that's great that we're finding new people to watch tennis or be interested about tennis.
And also, okay, so you have the YouTube Studio analytics, but I've noticed that I would say 75% of my audience is between the ages of 19 and I think 40. So I think what he does really well, and this is just happenstance, it's not that he meant to do it, that I believe I do want to see his YouTube Studio demographics, but I believe he brings in that younger audience of people that are, let's say, 13 to 19, of people that are aspiring to play high level college American tennis. I'm pretty sure he brings that in, or people
Yeah,
that want to try to go pro. So
exactly.
he's in my opinion, he's not only what YouTube tennis needs, but he's actually good for YouTube tennis. He's a positive force. Where me, and I'm more than willing to admit this, my personality on camera, not this type of camera, but like if I'm playing a tennis tournament or a tennis match on real tennis, I'm very toxic. Not to the point of disrespect, but like I'm toxic where I have outbursts. I'm very self-critical. I swear, I yell at myself a lot, but it's never to the detriment or to the disrespect of my opponent. But it's a more of like kind of like a Nick Kyrgios kind of personality that I have when I'm playing a tennis match. Obviously not to the same level, but definitely like a fresh face of like, oh, this 33-year-old is playing this 28-year-old. Okay, it's going to be a respectful tennis match. It's going to be a quiet tennis match. No, it's not. There's going to be a lot of screaming and yelling. So that type of personality and flavor is kind of like what he has, but more on a professional and not so much screaming like an idiot type of flavor. So he'll
Yeah,
be
he
good.
seems pretty level-headed. Like if from in your like, do you add extra spice because there's cameras, or you act like that also when you're playing like a non-camera match, for example, like if you're playing a tournament or something?
Um, Tournament, no, I wouldn't do that because a typical tournament setting, especially if it's indoors, you're going to start to disturb the people next to you, especially in indoor tennis tournament. So let's take an example of let's say real tennis, right? So those negative thoughts with those outbursts, they always occur in my head because I'm naturally a negative person. So it's here in the back of my head. But when I'm playing a tennis match on real tennis, specifically with someone that I know and that is a good friend, so they know they shouldn't take it personally, I let those thoughts go out. I don't have a filter. I just let it out. Mainly because it's a little bit entertaining. I get it. But also having like these outbursts, like it's kind of like not only is it partially comedy, which it is, but it's also like a nice healthy release of I'd rather scream at the top of my lungs because I dump a forehand in the middle of the net on an approach shot, which happens more so than I care to admit. But I'd rather do that than smash a tennis racket, or I'd rather do that than launch a ball into the street because it's right next to a major street. So it's a least negative way of having an outburst, I would say, rather than just keeping it bottled inside. So it is a little bit flavor, a little bit of extra spice, but that's the reasoning why.
Yeah, I noticed. I think most people notice that. Like, I'm a pretty calm guy generally, but I mean, everybody on the tennis court, you can have two personalities in life. You can
Yep.
be very calm. You go on a tennis court. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of self-hate or self-love, or depending on how it's going, maybe. But it's like there you have to kind of let out a bit more if you're constantly quiet, even when things are going against you. I think it's pretty easy to be Roger Federer when things are going well. Like you just, oh, my forehand is flowing. You can be completely quiet. You don't need to do any
Yeah.
outbursts or anything. But as soon as things starting to bottle up and you're starting to get more and more aggravated, then you sometimes need a release valve, right? Like you need,
Yeah.
okay, I need to let this shit out. Like whether you throw the racket or you scream or I mean, hopefully do something sensible, right? But
Yep.
I completely understand that type of release, right?
Well, even back then, not a lot of people realize this, especially if they just started watching professional tennis recently or, within the past 5 years. But Roger Federer had massive tantrum issues as juniors. Like he would throw rackets, he would destroy the tarps inside, behind the tennis baseline. Federer did not really mentally mature until I would say around like 22, 23. Like
Yeah.
he's not a Carlos Alcaraz. Alcaraz won his first Grand Slam at 19. He was a teenager.
Yeah.
Federer didn't win his first Wimbledon until he was what, 23, 24? By
Yeah.
most standards, by most standards, Federer's a late bloomer, both physically and mentally. People don't
Exactly.
understand that.
No, and I think it's good to read. I read the Federer biography. I had Christopher Clary on the podcast. It's a very good book, and he talks a lot about that. Like he's worked with a mental coach pretty early on because he had that problem, right? He was
Yeah.
very hard on himself, quite nasty in a way when he was losing. You know, he wasn't really like doing that well. And then he became this stoic Bjorn Borg like
Hmm.
guy that people got to know him for. Like people who knew him before that phase, they know that he used to snap and the racket used to fly across the court sometimes and it wasn't so pretty. And then he just, that's the most impressive part, I think, that he just found a way to deal with that. I don't know how he
Yeah.
did it, but it's like one of those questions I would ask him. Like, it's like, how how hard was that? That process must have been hard because it's not really him, you know. Then if
No.
he's he
No.
was acting like that before, right?
No, it's amazing too. But like, there's also something to be said with someone like a Nick Kyrgios or even a little bit of older generation. And this individual, I would argue, I don't have any objective evidence for this, but I think this individual is even more talented than Federer, and I would argue the most talented male tennis player of all time. I loved watching Marat Safin because he could just have an outburst. And it's not the fact that he's 6'4" and hits the living shit out of the ball. I would argue the best two-handed backhand ever to play
Yeah.
the game. But like he's just such a natural athlete, moves so well, strikes the ball so well. But at any time, if he gets broken or if he hits a forehand in the middle of the net or sails it long, there's that slight chance that he's just gonna go to town with his tennis racket.
Yeah.
It also
And
helps.
yeah,
He's a
like,
very charismatic guy. He's a very very charismatic guy to talk to, apparently.
yeah, no,
So,
I mean, he's in Marbella. He's been here, played with a friend of mine, Andrei
oh,
Kuznetsov. We talked about
so you've
that.
seen him in person?
No, I haven't seen him in person. He's just been here, and then like I
Oh,
asked
okay, okay.
Andre, like next time he comes and you practice with him, you have to message me because I have to
Yeah,
see this live, right? Like I really want to see it live because he's also one of my favorites, right?
yeah.
The way he just charismatic, you said it, but also his ball striking is poetically. I mean, it's poetic. It's just so clean, and he
Oh my
uses these
god.
small head sizes, the 90 square inch still, right? Like he still hits the crazy amount of pace on the ball, right?
And he's strong with Luxilon Big Banger at like what, 65 pounds?
He's running pretty high. Yeah, yeah. We have one of his rackets in the office. Nicky has one of those, one of his old rackets that still live to tell the tale, right? And very few. I think he broke like close to 1,400 rackets. I think someone
Yeah,
measured, like,
I
and
heard
it's
that
like
stat too.
that's an insane amount of rackets. I think Nick almost, I think Nick was almost like, I have to try to beat that, but there's no
Yeah.
chance, man. He's not gonna beat that.
So let's see. So he used is it 90 square inches or 89.5 square inches?
89.5, yeah,
Okay,
still
so
head
rounding up.
prestige. Yeah,
18 by 20.
yeah.
And he somehow could get topspin off that and still could hit a really good kick serve.
It's crazy, yeah, crazy. Then you have pretty good technique. Like that's pretty good
And
level.
he's a big dude too. Like one of my favorite videos to watch him warming up is or hitting training session is in Indian Wells. And
Yeah, I've seen that.
he's a big guy, right? But like him holding with a two-handed backhand with a 90 square inch racket, he looks like an even bigger guy just because of the relative size where everyone has a 100 square inch racket nowadays. So I just don't understand how he didn't get injured more often in terms of like his elbow and his shoulder, but also like just how much he could. I mean, he wasn't really known for, heavy topspin, but he could still hit topspin and hit the living crap out of it. So that just surprises me.
Yeah.
They're just
No,
not
it's
built
like
like
I
that
think
anymore.
sometimes you have to give some it's like credit to the legends. Like it's easy to forget tennis moves on now where Alcaraz is amazing to watch, you know. Djokovic still winning Grand Slams left, right. But it's like these older guys, like I grew up watching Stefan Edberg, still like fun to watch that serve and volley style. I loved Safin, watching him just take the ball early, you know, and he did his talent maybe not 100% justice, even though he won, I think, two slams,
Yeah.
because he had that temper, you know, but it's in him, right? So you can't do, maybe he could have gone to you know, some kind of therapist
Psychologist.
or something. He could have done something about and won more slams, but it's still, you know, interesting. It's like it just shows the human nature, right? A little bit more,
Mhm.
you know. It's he was more of a human legend than these guys who are winning 20 Grand Slams, which is completely insane in a sport like
Well,
tennis.
imagine winning. First of all, imagine like as a mortal just being able to qualify for a Grand Slam.
Yeah,
Imagine winning a Grand Slam, and imagine doing that 20 to 24 more times. It's unreal, and that's one of the things where like not to get into conspiracy, but there is an incentive for these top three guys, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, to be doping without them being properly tested or called out because it's part of the sport. And I know doping in Europe in terms of across different sports is a lot more common than it is in the States, but it's just like, how do these guys do it day in and day out? How is Nadal even able to walk at age 36 or 37? How is Djokovic able to win Grand Slams left and right against these, 22-year-olds that are just absolutely hungry to take him down? It's scary how good these guys are even at that age.
Yeah, it is absolutely crazy. Like I watched part of the latest final, and I do like looking at the match. I was like, okay, Medvedev's playing as good as I've seen him play. Like he's playing amazing tennis. He moves like someone who's not 2 meters, and he's still 2 meters and can hit that 2 meter serve. But still, like you feel like when it gets down to the crunch time, it's Djokovic is just too mentally strong. He always finds that kind of key to unlock the riddle against him. Sometimes he's failed, but it's just like it's almost demotivating to watch. It's gonna happen. It's like he's too good. I don't know.
Yeah, it's too good.
Shocking and impressive at the same time. Like, do you have any favorite players that you kind of idolized growing up, or that you like to watch now more than other players?
Federer, obviously, he's always going to be a top one. I have a lot more respect for Nadal now, especially after I came from his academy. And have you been there, the Rafa
Yeah,
Nadal
yeah,
Academy?
yeah.
It's not as expensive as I thought it would be, mainly because of the Iberia voucher from the States. I think it was 1,200 euro that they gave me to fly Iberia. But just the idea that, keep in mind, Tony Nadal and Rafa Nadal didn't need to have their own academy, right? They could have jacked up the price and did it all for the money. But from what I could tell, it's fairly reasonably priced, and it's really nice that it's in his home island of Mallorca, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. At least the headquarters, because they do have one in somewhere in Mexico. But the idea that he actually trains there, if he doesn't retire yet, Tony Nadal is there coaching some of these juniors. They don't need to do that, but they still choose to do that. Like, it's insane. You see Rafa Nadal just walking around on the grounds. You see Nadal, warming up on the treadmill that other people can publicly use. He doesn't need to do that, but he does, and he's a he's a very introverted and a very humble guy, from what I could tell. Let's say other tennis players aren't like that, but
No, no, no. I mean, it's also like I was also a Fed fan, coming back to tennis during his kind of era, and then Rafa took some time getting into, but then you can not respect that guy, and also
yeah,
that the humility and or the way he acts. Also, I mean, I'm met Tony a few times. I played doubles with Tony, and
really.
a super nice guy. Yeah, I
Oh,
got to talk tennis with him afterwards and stuff like that. So he's a very smart guy. I understand how he could bring his knowledge into Rafa. Rafa I met also a few times, but he's a bit more shy. Obviously, if your Spanish is not fantastic, it's either tougher to talk properly.
how
But it's very nice. Yeah,
how is your Spanish now that you live in Spain?
it's getting better. Like I understand quite a bit, but it's like I mean, I'm practicing as much as I can to speak, freely. But like there's a lot of where I live in Marbella, it's quite international, so you can easily
Really?
get
Okay,
away with
okay.
English, right? So that's the way you have to kind of force yourself to practice a bit more. I'm in the south of Spain, right? So a lot of you know people from everywhere here, right? Like it's a place that attracts a lot of international people. I mean, Novak is here, so I mean, I see Novak if I go to certain clubs, right? I know his brother personally, so it's
Really?
yeah, yeah,
Marbella?
he lives here.
I thought they lived in Monaco, in Monte Carlo.
No, no, he moved. I mean, he bought a house here. I think he's here most of the time, and I mean, he plays football sometimes with my friends, right? So joins football games, very chill. I joined his practice a few times, watched his practice up close, his brother is really nice guy as well. Like, so it's yeah. I also know his coach Carlos, so it's like it's a little small tennis knit group here in south of Spain. It's quite nice.
So they don't speak Catalan because that's north. That's more on the northern part of Spain.
Yeah, exactly. When we're Barcelona and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously, I'm Google mapping this because I'm an American. I don't know European geography fairly well. But when I went to Spain, I was actually shocked how very few people spoke basic English.
Yeah.
Only 25% of people I could carry a conversation to. And English is technically my second language. I know Filipino because my parents are from the Philippines. So I actually made a concerted effort to start trying to learn Spanish using this app called Babbel to at
Yeah. Yeah.
least start understanding basic phrases. So I always try to do that like 2 hours a week just to kind of get going. But I think Spanish is the most spoken language in all of Europe. So that will help me no matter where I'm at. So
Yeah, it's good. I mean, Latin American as well, stuff like that. So it's actually
what's your native language?
Swedish.
Swedish. Okay.
Welcome, yeah. So Yeah, Swedish, and I lived in Malta, so I speak some Maltese, which is kind of close to Arabic slash Italian. And
Yeah.
then I have German. My grandmother was German, so I speak some German, and then I have the Spanish now. And besides that, obviously English. But
So when you grew up in Sweden, you said, right?
yeah,
So all Sweden, all people from Sweden, they all speak good English, right? That's part of your schooling.
I would say, yeah. I mean, compared to other countries, pretty high on the list because like we never had. I mean, the problem they have in Spain and in Germany and some other places, maybe Italy as well, France, is that they dub everything, right? So you watch an English TV show or an American show in most cases, right? It's they have dubbing, so
Yeah.
the voices they put another language, which I think is a horrible idea because it ruins the creative idea because the voice is different, obviously.
Yep.
It looks complete shit. People will maybe be angry with me, but this is my opinion. And in Sweden we always had like just subtitles, right? So you listen to the English and then you have the Swedish subtitles, which is pretty much an English lesson, right?
So
So
subbing. That's
yeah,
that's
it's
what we
just
call it in the
something,
States.
right?
Yeah.
So the thing is like then you hear the English, you see the Swedish, and you connect. So
Okay.
even like older people can speak decent English in Sweden, right? Because like they have that. And then we study English in school from like fourth grade, so it's like mandatory. So or
Oh, it
maybe
is
earlier now.
mandatory. It's
Yeah,
not a
yeah, it's
choice.
under
Okay.
100% mandatory. Yeah, it's
No,
one of
that's
the
good.
key
Yeah.
topics.
So when you have dreams, right? When you're dreaming about tennis, when you're sleeping, you're dreaming. What language is it typically in? Because that's a telltale.
Yeah, it's kind of English these days, I think. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
English is your primary then?
It's
You'd say.
almost become that. I'm thinking about it sometimes, but yeah, I think a lot. I think sometimes like the English comes more naturally than Swedish. Like I don't go to Sweden that often, right? So it's like I lived 15 years in Malta, 16 maybe here, and I lived in the States a few years before 2 years, and so it's been like I've been abroad for most of my adult life, right? So it's been
Yeah.
Malta is English as well. So I think that makes a difference. You know? Even
Oh,
like
that's
I
nice.
have a Swedish friend here, and we go to lunch. He's been living in Spain for 20 years. I don't know. We speak English. It's
Nice.
very strange.
Is the but I did hear from, and also with the internationals that I've dealt with in college, that Germany has the best English speaking, let's say, culture in terms of Europe. Is that true, or do you think Sweden is still the best?
I would say the Nordic countries probably better. I wouldn't say like because if I travel around Germany and being like, I'm part German and I know German, I feel like sometimes in Germany it's tough with the English, right? So it's not.
Yeah,
I would say it's easier in the Nordic country. I mean, a smaller country, you need to rely more on a international language. If you're a big country like Germany, big economy and stuff, like Germany is stronger. The language, the currency, everything was
yeah.
stronger back then, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I understand like the French, they don't want to learn other languages. The Spanish, maybe not so keen on English because it's kind of a big culture, big language, big country, right? So
The worst from what my experience though is people that grew up in the United Kingdom have they have they don't understand other. If you're born in the UK, you're less pressured to learn another language.
of
That's what I
course,
meant to say.
I notice that all the time
Yeah,
here. Like there's a lot of English people here, and they're not obviously so incentivized or interested in learning other languages because they feel like we know the number one language. I mean,
yeah.
same with Americans, right? It's like we know the number one language. Why should we, put a lot of effort into learning other languages? English should work everywhere.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. Yeah.
I want to correct you though. In terms of Americans learning only English, that's true if you're in the northern part of America. If you're in Florida, especially like South Florida or even
Spanish.
Texas, you have to learn Spanish at least to a basic to a basic competency, just because of there's a lot of people from Mexico that live in the southern parts of the U.S., which is good,
Pretty, yeah.
which
Pretty big
is
Latino influence in general, right? Like
very
even
very big, very big.
Colombianos and whatnot, right? So
Very big. And it's amazing that in college tennis now, especially the higher level college tennis like Division 1 or NAIA, it's not English that's spoken on the court. It's Spanish.
yeah.
Just because it's South America and the people from Europe understanding Spanish, and they come to the States, so they speak Spanish with each other.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When I lived in the States, I lived in Washington D.C. I didn't notice that much of a Spanish. I mean, some, but if you
Well,
go
it's
to
Washington
Miami, it's
D.C.,
different, right?
so
Yeah,
it's a little bit north. But
yeah, it's
if you,
quite north. So
yeah,
and also it's very. I mean, it's kind of a specific city in many ways, right? So,
oh,
but it's true. It's always good to learn new languages. Like it's a superpower when you meet people who know like 4 or 5 languages. Yeah, I'm always super impressed. Like it's
yeah,
such a cool thing to know, and to be able to communicate with people in different languages. It's
yeah.
a cool skill.
Well, DC. When were you in DC? What years?
01, 02.
So was it still pretty expensive back then? Because it's one of the
Yeah,
most
yeah,
expensive cities.
it was very
Okay.
expensive. Yeah, yeah.
Also, it's humid during the summer too. That's what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
recall.
it's pretty rough tennis climate there. Like it's very humid, and summer is hot. I mean, Malta is the same. It's very humid, quite hot. I mean, DC is built on a swamp, as far as I know. So it's like it's kind of
Mm.
like that kind of really heavy air, right? It's
Yeah,
tough to play tennis in.
I like
Here,
it because it
it
slows
is
down the
better.
ball. It slows
Right?
down the ball. Well, you're next to the ocean now in Marbella, so
It's good. Yeah,
that's
it's good.
good.
And we have a good tennis vibe here. I can recommend people who are into tennis. I mean, there are other places in Spain with more academies. If you're really into going to an academy and stuff, like Barcelona is pretty good, like Alicante, that area. But it's nice here. Like it's many nice things here
Yeah.
about tennis, and that's probably why. Like, and you have a lot of pros practicing here in during the year. Like we have Chapo coming here all the time. They have a place, Shapovalov, and then we have Novak living here, and many other players coming for off season. And during the off season, you will see a lot of players come here. Like you can just go down to some club and you will bump into some ATP pros or WTA pros.
Marbella is not that big, is it?
No, 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 no,
Yeah,
no.
it looks small.
150,000, but it's like a part of Costa del Sol, like the Sun Coast,
Yeah,
and that's all connected. And then like Malaga is like 500,000 people, so that's a city connected
that's
to
the
it's
city.
like
Okay,
yeah,
that's the
45
biggest.
minutes away. That's where the airport is and stuff like that. Yeah,
Okay. Well, I gotta. Looks like I gotta swing by Marbella one of these days.
yeah, do it. Play some tennis, do some
Yeah.
videos. It'll be fun. I always
Well,
encourage people to show up if they, I mean I know it's the hike from the States, but
that's
if
fine.
you're going to Europe, it's not a bad place.
Yeah, especially for tennis related stuff. That'd be good.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe you and I should play a tennis match. Record
yeah.
it.
We should
Yeah. All right.
kick my ass.
Well, I
Well,
gotta. We'll see. We'll see. I gotta get going because of work stuff. But definitely thank you. Join us for everything, and we'll keep in touch with email, and then we'll see when I can go to Marbella. It'll be fun.
For sure, man. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed talking to you and like your stuff. Good luck with all your tennis and software development and all that stuff. And
Yep.
we keep in touch.
All right. Happy hitting.
Say, man.